Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at a story about immigration.
All right.
And we're going to be using an article from ABC News and some screenshots to help us unpack this. The basic story is this. The Trump administration is starting to house migrants at Guantanamo Bay.
Interesting.
So it's pretty complex, obviously.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about why they're doing this, what some reactions have been, and what it can mean for the future. Ready to go.
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, so right off the bat, the headline from ABC News was really something.
Yeah.
First migrant flight lands at Guantanamo Bay carrying worst of the worst. Strong words there.
Yeah, I mean, worst of the worst. It's definitely designed to make people think a certain way about these migrants.
What do you think they mean by that?
Well, to get that, we have to remember what's going on with immigration right now. This all goes back to Trump's executive order to expand the Migrant Operations Center at Guantanamo.
Right.
That was on January 29th.
And this article is talking about the first flight. And they say these migrants are suspected members of this Venezuelan gang called Trend Aragua.
Okay.
What
Yeah.
can you tell us about them? Why are they supposed to be so dangerous?
Well, they're really a prime example of how gangs can take over when things are chaotic.
Uh-huh.
You know, Venezuela's been a mess politically and economically, and
All right.
Trend Aragua has used that. Now they're huge in human trafficking, smuggling drugs, extortion, and they're brutal. But it's more than just that. It's that they're smart. They've got these connections to international criminal networks. So it's like, who knows how far their influence goes? That's what's scary.
That's what I was thinking, too, this reach that they have. And it's interesting because the article mentions these migrants are going to be kept separate from the other detainees at Guantanamo.
Oh, why do you think that is?
I think it's kind of a two-pronged thing. First, you have to think about logistics. Guantanamo is super high security, right?
Yeah. They've got their own way of doing things. Throwing a new group into the mix, especially with different backgrounds, different security risks, would be a huge headache. And remember, these migrants are going to be guarded by Homeland Security and ICE, not the military guys who usually run Guantanamo.
Right.
So keeping them separate just makes things easier.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Less chance of conflict, too.
So it's more about practicality than about worrying about conflict between the two groups.
Exactly. Keeps things simpler for the guards, you know? And it shows how these new migrants are different legally from the existing detainees. It's just another layer to this whole thing.
Yeah, it's definitely not straightforward. So we've talked about the situation itself, but what about the reaction to this? I was looking at one of the screenshots, and I noticed that in the More For You section, there's El Mundo. That's a Spanish language news outlet. Do you think that's significant?
I think it is. It seems like ABC News might be. Realizing the story is important to Spanish speakers, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of migrants come from Spanish-speaking countries, so it's smart to think about how they're going to react to this, how they're discussing it.
So let's zoom out for a sec. What are the biggest takeaways here?
Well, no doubt, the Trump administration's trying to make a statement here. They're taking a hard stance on illegal immigration, and they're not afraid to use Guantanamo. I mean, that place has a lot of baggage, right?
Right.
It just brings up so many questions. What's going to happen to Guantanamo? What about the resources for these new migrants? And how's it going to affect everyone involved, both the new people and the ones already there?
Yeah, definitely a lot to think about. And that brings us to a question for our listeners. Guantanamo Bay is, well, it has a lot of symbolic weight.
Definitely.
So how do you think this is going to change how people view Guantanamo? Not just here, but around the world. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.